Hello everybody and welcome to the Book Bunch. My name is Sam. It is so great to have you guys here for another book review video. This week I decided to read a little bit out of my comfort zone and try some different genres or dabble in genres that I haven't really had much experience in. So there were two that were actually pretty decent, and then there's one which I ended up DNFing because of some content, and I just didn't feel comfortable necessarily continuing when I knew that if there was this kind of content this early on, it would only get worse. So we're going to talk about that DNF first. The first one is Daughters of Fire, which I have had in my shelf for the longest time. I've carried this with me through like 3 or 4 house moves, I think. Maybe something like that. I've had it in at least 3 homes, if not 4. And yeah, I thought I'd really love it based on the blurb. And honestly, if it wasn't for the content, I 100% would have continued. Because the story was quite good, but yeah, I couldn't continue just because like morally it wasn't 100% for me. But this book is a historical fantasy, or at least I think it might be meant to be a historical fantasy and not just a historical fiction, or something like that, because it is about, it's a dual timeline, which I very rarely dabble in anyway, but it is about this, one timeline is of this Celtic queen that there isn't much information about, and then the other, hang on, I'm just going to shut the window really quick because it's cold. Yeah, so the other dual timeline is about this historian who she is like basically studying this prominent, well, I guess the point is that she's not prominent, but this figure in history who made a difference, but there's not much recorded about her because it was like the Celtics at this time didn't really write things down, and the only information they have to go off is like Roman information and documents that they've discovered, but it doesn't really give a clear picture of this character at all. And she decides to write a book based on this queen from the past because she starts hearing this queen's voice in her head, and she knows that it's not historically accurate, and she knows that it's against every fiber of her being as a historian to do this, but she just cannot shake this voice from this Celtic queen. And she finishes the book and she brings it to her like head of department at her uni that she works at as a professor, and he is absolutely furious, and like there's a whole feud going on between the two of them, but she is adamant that she needs to publish it anyway. So this is like set as like the month or something before her book comes out. She's also trying to turn it into a play, so there's this element of her trying to talk to this famous playwright and actress to try and get it play worthy. And she thinks that now she's written the book, the voice will go away, but it actually comes out with a vengeance, and like she starts having all these visions and stuff of this queen as a young girl where there's absolutely no information about, and she starts hearing her voice and it starts talking to her even more. And then in the other timeline where we're following the queen as a girl, you see this queen hear the historian's voice, and she thinks it's a goddess, and so she like goes to sacrifice, well, not sacrifice things, but leave offerings for her. And yeah, so it's very interesting. It's obviously set in a world where like there are gods, not our God, And yeah, it's really interesting. I was really enjoying it up until there was a little bit of sexual content. It wasn't overly like, it was relatively descriptive, but it was very short. Like, it only lasted like a paragraph. But it was like in the first 100 pages, or like just after the first 100 pages, and it's a 500-page book. And I just, like, based on the story so far and where the story was going, I knew it was going to get a lot worse. If the author was even willing to go there to that degree. So I ultimately decided not to continue. But I thought I would let you guys know anyway, in case it sounds like you'd be interested in. Because obviously people have different sensitivities to what I do. So that is Daughters of Fire. It is super interesting, and if you do like Celtic stuff, it's probably a good read for you. But for me, it was a DNF. And then I read The Mountain Between Us, which I actually picked up this book because Celestia, like, I think maybe end of last year during Christmas time, she made a video talking about wintry books, and she picked out this one and she said it was really good, and I totally agree. Sorry, I have an itchy nose and an itchy face. But I super agree. This book is about these two strangers who meet in an airport, and their flight gets delayed or cancelled or whatever, and she is like a bit stressed by it because she's meant to be getting married the next day, and he is a doctor who needs to get back to his patients, and he's like a super skilled doctor, and they get they end up finding this I guess private charter plane type of thing that is willing to take them the distance, so that they don't have to wait till the next day and possibly risk missing their appointments and stuff. And the doctor has quite a bit of money, so he's like, okay, I'll pay the fee. And they all get along really well. And the flight's only meant to be like a couple of hours long, and as they go over this like super treacherous part, because there's like a big snowstorm, but also they're flying over this like section of wilderness that's like full of these mountains and stuff, the old guy that's flying the plane has a heart attack, and he like manages to crash land, but he ultimately dies pretty much immediately because of his heart attack. Like, that's what kills him, not the impact. And then these other two in the back, he is fairly injured, but hers is a lot more than his. And so he like realizes the terrible situation they are in, and he gets to work being a doctor and like trying to help her and fix her up and keep her alive, and he's trying to monitor himself as well. And it's basically, the rest of the book is about their journey to try and survive and try to get rescued and all of that. And there's a lot of like, we follow his point of view the whole time, and he is reminiscing on memories of his wife, because he has told this lady that he's going through a separation, and he had twins, and he absolutely loves his wife, but yeah, the separation is too big or something like that. And he's got this tape recorder that he's been recording messages to his wife on, because that was something him and his wife had started early on in their marriage, and he had continued it even with this space between them. And this like younger like woman that he's with is like, oh, like I want to love like that, like you guys can sort it out, like it's gonna be okay, and like all of this stuff. And she's starting to realize that like she doesn't know if she really does want to marry the guy that she's meant to be marrying, because like she kind of married him more for the sake of just not being lonely, and she kind of settled quite a bit because she thought that love, like what this guy has with his wife, is only in movies and all of that kind of thing. And yeah, it's a really interesting story. The ending is like a crazy twist. Um, and I still don't know how I feel about it, to be honest, but it was definitely a good read. I think I ultimately gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It probably is worthy of a 5 star, but I just still don't know about the ending. So there's that, but definitely worth your time and worth reading. But yeah, it's like a contemporary fiction survival kind of drama book. But yeah, also outside of my comfort zone. And then finally, I read The Maid. I have mixed feelings about this one too. I loved the story and the main character and her voice, because it's from this girl's voice who she's got like she has difficulties socializing and difficulties processing the world and meeting social norms and all of that kind of thing. And she is very OCD and loves cleaning. Um, and so she decided she wanted to be a maid in a hotel, and she thinks it's the best job in the world, and she just loves everything, being clean and cleaning up people's messes and everything. And she kind of gets that from her grandmother. And up until 9 months ago, she was living with her grandmother, but her grandmother sadly passed away. And she often recites in her head, depending on the situation, different things, different bits of advice her grandma gave her. And it's a really sweet relationship between the two of them. But yeah, so it's about this maid who works at this hotel. And again, like I said, she doesn't pick up on people's cues. She's very literal. So she doesn't understand like sarcasm or like common like phrases that people say, that kind of thing. And so she, for someone who's very detail orientated, she misses certain details. And yeah, she is a little bit ostracized at work, I guess you'd say. But she has managed to find some friends. But throughout this book, she discovers that some of her friends aren't as friendly as she thinks. And she gets wrapped up in this murder that happens in the hotel, because she's a maid and she's cleaning a room one day, and she walks in and she finds a dead body of like the most prominent guy in the hotel, and like guest in the hotel. And then she ends up basically being framed for that murder, and she is like, I didn't do it. But yeah, it's really interesting story. I really loved it. The only things I have to say about it though, and it makes me go, oh, can I really recommend it or not, is there's a couple of times, like it's really not much, like it would be no more than 10 times I reckon, the use of God's name in vain. And there is because like when other people are talking to her, occasionally they'll say it. But also there's a couple of scenes and instances where it almost seems like the author is saying that sometimes murder or assisted suicide is morally okay. And I don't agree with that. I don't know if that was the author's intention or not, or if that's just what I was reading into it, but I will let you know that does occur so that you can make your own decision about whether or not you want to give it a read. But apart from that, it was really great. So that is The Maid. I guess it's more like a contemporary crime fiction, maybe. I don't quite know what this genre is actually meant to be, but it was quite interesting. So those are the books that I read this week that were outside of my comfort zone. And yeah, let me know what other books outside of my normal genres I should try, because I'm always interested to give that a go. But yeah, next week you should be getting a book haul from me, because I've recently bought a few secondhand books and I will be going away, so I'll have to pre-film that one for you. And then yeah, we'll see what happens after that. But I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys have a great week, and